What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about a very disturbing story about a Canadian woman who's pictured right here. Her name is Jasmine Mooney. And today, I just want to learn about her story because this is something I'd heard a little bit about. A Canadian being held or detained here in the United States. It sounded really messed up and like a really crazy, sort of unjust story. But I have to admit, I don't understand what exactly happened or the circumstances. So let's take a look here. It says, I'm the Canadian who was detained by ICE for 2 weeks. 2 weeks? So, ICE, she was detained by ICE. ICE is the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And it says, I felt like I had been kidnapped. This is just, what's going on here? I was stuck in a freezing cell without explanation, despite eventually having lawyers and media attention. Yet compared with others, I was lucky? What's going on here? America. Really? Like, really? What are we doing? What are we doing here? What is this? Like, I don't know. I feel like a lot more Americans need to take a look at this and really, I don't know, have our eyes opened a little bit to some of the crazy stuff happening. Although, I don't know the background to this. Maybe she went on a murder spree and robbed 12 banks and launched a nuke on Texas or something. Who knows? But joking aside, this sounds like a pretty crazy story. So let's take a look here. There was no explanation, no warning. 1 minute I was in an immigration office talking to an officer about my work visa, which had been approved months before and allowed me, a Canadian, to work in the United States. So, sounds like she's got all her ducks in a row, as you might say. She's got her work visa, allows her to legally work in the United States. It's been approved. Next, I was told to put my hands against the wall, and I was patted down like a criminal before being sent to an ICE detention center without the chance to talk to a lawyer. It just sounds like, I don't know, like, are we not living in a first world country anymore? Or it's like, I understand she's not a American citizen, but it's like, this is not what we're about, or at least not what I thought. This is how we treat people who want to come into our country and benefit our society. She came to the U.S. to work, to add value, and we're patting her down, sending her to a detention center. What happened to trigger all this? Again, it's easy to jump to conclusions of it, but what went wrong? I grew up in Whitehorse, Yukon. I built a career acting in, oh, she's an actor, acting in film and TV. I've owned bars and restaurants, flipping condos. Oh, wow. Pretty cool, actually. I found my passion working in health and wellness. I was given an opportunity to launch an American brand of health tonics called Holy Water, a job that would involve moving to the United States. Oh boy, is that where it all began? Probably, in hindsight, something she really regrets ever happening. I was granted my trade NAFTA work visa, which allows Canadian and Mexican citizens to work in the United States for specific professional occupations. I got it on my second attempt. I have no criminal record. I love the United States. I consider myself to be a kind, hardworking person. This is so sad. Like, already the setup to this is like sad. She likes the United States. She's very successful, hardworking, seems like just a normal person. I started working in California and traveled back and forth between Canada and the United States without any complications until one day, returning to the United States, a border officer questioned me about my initial visa denial and then my subsequent visa approval. So she said earlier that she applied for a work visa. It was declined at first. And then on the second attempt, it was approved. I don't see why there should be any question. Like, if you've been approved, if your work visa, I don't care if it's on your 87th try, you know? If your work visa was approved, the United States government has looked at you and approved your visa. End of story. You've already gone through all the scrutiny and the application process. If you've gotten the visa, that's already happened. Why are you now having to talk to a border officer and sort of get questioned again and all this brought up you've already gone through that if you have the visa. So why are they doing this to her? He asked why I had gone to the San Diego border the second time to apply. I explained that was where my lawyer was and that he wanted to accompany me to assure there was no issues. That makes sense. I don't know everything about this immigration visa stuff, but it's like, if you're taking this seriously and you're like an actor or a business person, maybe you bring your lawyer to make sure everything goes well. Sure, all right. After a long interrogation, the officer told me it seemed shady. I can't stand this kind of stuff. See that this is one of the strangest things that I've learned about the U.S. border is that it's just a lot of border officers, and you talk to one of them, and it's just up to their discretion. It's just some person. It's just some guy who's it's like, you seem kind of shady to me. It's like this super successful Canadian woman, actor, business lady with her lawyer. And that's the person? That's the person that you're like, kind of shady activity here going on. You want to work for a living? You want to work in our country? It's like, what? They said I seemed shady and that my visa hadn't been properly processed. He claimed I couldn't work for a company in the United States that made use of hemp, one of the beverage ingredients. I don't know anything about that. He revoked my visa. Oh my God. Told me I could still work for the company from Canada. But if I wanted to return to the United States, I'd have to reapply. What a headache. I was devastated. I'd started building my life in California. But she, obeyed the mandate here, the decree of this random guy, and said, I stayed in Canada for the next few months and was offered a similar position in the United States with a different health and wellness brand. I'm sure she would feel extremely nervous at this point, trying to do the same thing, but I restarted the visa process and returned to the same immigration office at the San Diego border, since they had processed my visa before and I was familiar with it. How dare you use common sense? How dare you go to places you're familiar with and do this process again exactly correctly how you're supposed to? How dare you? The nerve. Hours passed, and many confused opinions about my case, I imagine. Because now she has a visa that's been revoked or declined or whatever, and she's having to apply again, so now her record is even more messed up. The officer I spoke to was kind, but told me, due to my previous issues, I need to apply for my visa through the consulate. I told her I hadn't been aware that I needed to do it that way, but I had no problem doing that. Then she said something strange. You didn't do anything wrong. You are not in trouble. You are not a criminal. Whoa. I would have the exact same reaction. She says, I remember thinking, why would she say that? Of course I'm not a criminal. Exactly. It's like, why are we using the C word? Why are we pulling out the C word here? Criminal. No one said criminal. No one said that word till you said it. No one said that word till right now. What do you mean? I'm literally here at the U.S. government trying to do this the right way. There's people who sneak over in the dead of night, jumping over fences, and I'm here doing this the right way, and you're pulling out the criminal word. She then told me she had to send me back to Canada. That didn't concern me. I assumed I would simply book a flight home. But as I sat searching for flights, a man approached me. "Come with me," he said. Come with me. Who is this guy? There was no explanation, no warning. He led me to a room, took my belongings, and ordered me to put my hands against the wall. What has she done? This is so crazy. I'm sure there's a million stories like this of people interacting with the US government and law enforcement, and it's got to be very scary because you're truly, whether you're an American citizen or a Canadian citizen or whatever, whenever you're dealing with law enforcement, and in her case, she wants this to go well because she really wants to be able to work in the United States, you're really just at their mercy. So if they're like, give me your stuff and put your hands against the wall, I can see where she wants to comply with that and not disobey. And she wants this to resolve amicably so she can get a proper visa. But it's just, at a certain point, it's just, at this point already, this is scary. A woman began patting me down. The commands came at me rapid fire, one after another, too fast to process. They took my shoes. They pulled out my shoelaces. "What are you doing? What's happening?" I asked. "You're being detained." "I don't understand. What does that mean? For how long?" "I don't know." What? It's just so disturbing that they can take all your stuff, pat you down, take your shoes, tell you you're being detained, and they don't even say what's happening. They don't say what you've done, why they're doing this, how long this is going to take. It feels like your basic human rights are being stripped, like you're not even a human. That would be the response to nearly every question I would ask for the next 2 weeks. I don't know. Wow, this poor woman. What else? This is terrifying, but oddly, intriguing. They brought me downstairs for a series of interviews and medical questions, searched my bags, and told me I had to get rid of half of my belongings because I couldn't take them with me. "Take everything with me where?" I asked. A woman asked me for the name of someone they could contact on my behalf. It's in moments like this you realize you don't actually know anyone's phone number anymore. Yeah, no kidding. It's all just in your contact list. You don't memorize phone numbers anymore like the good old days. By some miracle, I had memorized my best friend's number. I gave them her phone number. So she's just being... What was the trigger for this? What was it? She said she showed up in San Diego at an immigration office and was applying for a work visa. Then they suddenly said, "You didn't do anything wrong. Come with me, get against the wall, pat you down, take off your shoes, come with us, you're being detained." That's what happened? Just imagine that happening to you. They handed me a mat and a fold-up sheet of aluminum foil. What, they want you to cook a salmon or something? What is this? Your blanket? A folded up sheet of aluminum foil? That's a blanket? I don't understand. I was taken to a tiny, freezing cement cell with bright fluorescent lights and a toilet. At least count yourself lucky. You got a toilet. Based on what's been going on here, count your lucky stars that it's only freezing cold and a dirty toilet and you got your aluminum foil. That's probably what they were saying to her. Count your lucky stars. There were 5 other women lying on their mats with aluminum sheets wrapped around them. They looked like dead bodies. The guard locked the door behind me. Is this a picture? What the heck is going on? This sounds like some random third world country from a horror movie where you are captured after going on vacation and they sell you off in like to some slave trade or something, you know? Like, but it's not. It's just the United States government. It's hard to distinguish between them. For 2 days, we remained in that cell. For 2 days, you were in that cell? How is this legal? Is she suing? It's hard to just sue like a foreign government. For 2 days, we remained in that cell? Only briefly leaving for food? No one's telling her what's going on? This is unbelievable. The lights never turned off. This is like how you treat war criminals, you know? You give them some foil to sleep on. You keep the lights on so they can't get good sleep. You keep them in a cage. We never knew what time it was, and no one answered our questions. I would be terrified. I would be absolutely terrified. I would actually think, like, this is it. I'm going to American prison, I guess, forever, and no one will hear from me again. Like, no one in the cell spoke English. So these are like perhaps people who have committed crimes or illegally immigrating from other countries. No one speaks English, or they're just women just like her who didn't really do anything, who are being thrown in this back room. So I either tried to sleep or meditate from having a breakdown. Good for you. I didn't trust the food, so I fasted, assuming I wouldn't be there long. On the 3rd day, I was allowed to make a phone call. Why did it take 3 days? How does that make any sense? How can this be our process? It just really feels like random government people who don't really have any kind of process or rules and can just kind of do whatever they feel like. Taking their sweet time, putting you in a cage, taking 3 days to get your phone call ready. Don't really care. It just seems like no one really cares what happens to her. I called Britt and told her I didn't understand what was happening. No one would tell me when I was going home, and she was my only contact. They gave me paperwork to sign and told me I was being given a 5-year ban. So now her whole work life is ruined, but at this point she probably doesn't even care, just wants to get out of here. Unless I applied for re-entry through the consulate. I wouldn't blame her if she never stepped foot in anything American for the rest of her life. The officer also said it didn't matter whether I signed the papers or not. It was happening, regardless. I mean, it's crazy to read these first-hand accounts of what it's really like when you're in these situations. Like, part of me wanted to think that in the United States we obey the rule of law and we value freedom. Freedom, that's our no. All of this goes completely against that. I was so delirious that I just signed it. I told them I'd pay for a flight home, and I asked if I could leave. No answer. Infuriating. I mean, I don't. She must have gone through like 7 hours of tapes in her head of meditation. Like, I hope she had a really long yoga routine or meditation or something, because I don't know how she didn't go crazy. Then they moved me to another cell, this time with no mat, no blanket. I sat on the freezing cement floor for hours. That's when I realized they were processing me into real jail. The Otay Meza Detention Center? Pictured here. This all started with her voluntarily walking into a U.S. immigration building, presenting her application, talking about if she can get a work visa, she loves the U.S. From that, now she's in jail. just, I mean, even on the surface level, you just have to say, this is the kind of person we're expending our resources on. We're The American government is using money and resources to detain Canadians like this, who are like the most upstanding citizen I could even imagine, frankly. Like just trying to do everything correctly. I was told to shower. I was given a jail uniform. This isn't the most, this is the most insane story. I was fingerprinted, interviewed. I begged for information. How long will I be here? I don't know your case, said the man. Could be days. Could be weeks. But I'm telling you right now, you need to mentally prepare yourself for months, lady. I swear that's what the guard sounded like. Months. I felt like I was going to throw up. Of course, absolutely. I was taken to the nurse's office for a medical check. She asked what had happened to me. She had never seen a Canadian here before. Is this just some big mistake? And it doesn't really matter if it's a mistake or on purpose. I'm not sure which is worse. If this is all on purpose, it's a horror story. If it's a mistake, it's a horror story. Doesn't even matter. When I told her my story, she grabbed my hand and said, "Do you believe in God?" Jeez, that. I told her I only recently found God, but I now believed in God more than anything. I believe God brought you here for a reason. Yeah, to be annoyed out of her mind. I know it feels like your life is in a million pieces, but you will be okay. Through this, I think you're going to find a way to help others. That's a nice sentiment, to be honest. At the time, I didn't know what that meant. She asked if she could pray with me. I held her hands. I wept. I felt like I had been sent an angel. I was then placed in a real jail. 2 levels of cells around a common area, just like in the movies. I was put in a tiny cell with a bunk bed and a toilet. She's literally in jail. And I don't even know what she's done. Neither does she. It truly, I don't know what rights a Canadian citizen has in the United States. I'm kind of looking at this just like as if they've done this to an American citizen, because I feel like, I don't know the law, but Canadian citizens should have a lot of rights in the United States. A lot. Like, historically, we are very, very good relationship, good allies. Like, this is not how we should be treating Canadians, or really anybody from any country that's doing what she's doing. Everything completely legally, by the book. Her story was a little complicated, I guess, but still no excuse for all this. The best part, there were blankets! After 3 days without one, I wrapped myself in a blanket and felt some comfort. Jeez. For the first day, I didn't leave my cell. I continued fasting, terrified that the food might make me sick. The only water came from the tap attached to the toilet. I forced myself to step out of my cell, meet the guards, and learn the rules. This is like a TV show. This is like a movie. Like, this is made up. Please tell me this is just the plot to a bad show. She's in jail, like, eventually stepping out of the cell to maintain some sanity, and she's meeting everyone in the prison that she's in. One of them told me, "No fighting." "I'm a lover, not a fighter," I joked. I asked if there had ever been a fight here. In this unit? No. No one in this unit has a criminal record? No one in this jail has a criminal record? I'm starting to get very uncomfortable here. Like, I'm learning some things about the United States I really didn't know about. Why do we have jails for people with no criminal record? You go to jail if you're a criminal. What the heck is this? That's when I started meeting other women. That's when I started hearing their stories. Wow, they actually got pictures of some of this stuff? Wow. Yeah, she's literally in prison. That's when I made a decision. I would never allow myself to feel sorry for my situation. every woman I met there was in an even more difficult position. There were 140 of us in our unit. Many women had lived and worked in the United States legally for years, but they had overstayed their visas, often after reapplying and being denied. They had all been detained without warning. What the hell is this? What is this? So it's you shouldn't overstay your visa. I don't think that means you should be, thrown against a wall and put in a jumpsuit and put in prison without anything but at worst, shouldn't these people just be deported back home? If someone is a criminal, I agree they should be taken off the streets. Yes, of course. But not one of these women had a criminal record. These women acknowledged they shouldn't have overstayed, and they took accountability for that. Right, of course. But their frustration was about the endless bureaucratic limbo they're trapped in. That's really what it seems like. That is what it seems like right now. Just U.S. government nonsense trapped in this endless series of meetings and paperwork and cases. We'll get to your case. We'll get to that. It's in the stack. We'll talk to you in a few months. The real issue is how long it took to get out of this system, with no clear answers, no timeline, and no way to move forward. Once deported, many had no choice but to abandon everything they own because of the cost of shipping it back home. Wow. Well, she has a lot of stories about other women there. Family of 3 who had paid taxes. Another woman from Canada with her husband who was detained after a traffic stop. She had overstayed and accepted that she'd been deported. So some of these people they overstayed, which you should not do. But you shouldn't be treated like this. Someone's 10-year visa expired. She moved back home, but she overstayed by 1 month. Because, in practical reality that we live in, it's probably difficult to uproot your entire life and move home. But also kind of poor planning on her part. But you shouldn't be stuck in this situation, that's for sure. Oh my God. 3 a.m. the next day, I woke up in my cell. Pack your bag, you're leaving. I get to go home, I said. The officer shrugged. I don't know where you're going. Of course, that's what they said. Of course. Of course, no one knew anything. I grabbed my things, went downstairs. There were women with tears, 10 women with tears, but not happy tears. This is when I learned of the term transferred. For many of these women, detention centers had become a twisted version of home. These women, these prisons, this is their homes. Shuffling between these prisons is home. I had no idea what was waiting for me next. Next stop was Arizona. The transfer took 24 hours, sleepless, grueling. This time men were transferred with us. 50 of us crammed into a prison bus for 5 hours. This story is insane. This is insane. We were bound in chains, wrapped tightly around our waists, cuffed, shackled to our feet, to the bus. I mean, it doesn't blow my mind that this happens, but this is for this is for horrible criminals who have gone through the justice system and have had their day in court and been sentenced to prison. That's what this treatment is for. Instead, it's for this Canadian woman, somehow. Next destination, we were forced to go through the entire intake process again. We had to urinate and do pregnancy tests. It was disgusting. Why? We sat in freezing cold jail cells. Why are we spending all this money bussing these people around, detaining them on food, but we can't spend a little money on some heating? Can we get some heating in these jail cells, for God's sake? Can we get a little taxpayer money towards this? For crying out loud. The freezing cold jail cells. What's up with that? I bet it's on purpose. waiting for everyone to be processed. In another room, a woman spotted her husband. They hadn't seen each other for weeks. We were exhausted. I felt like I was hallucinating. There's no pillows. Ice cold room, of course, ice cold room. One blanket. 30 of us shared a room. Jeez. Everything was meant to break you. That's what it certainly sounds like. I was able to connect with Britt, her friend, best friend, she gave her phone number to her best friend. She told me they were working around the clock to get me out. Yeah, did the Canadian government ever get involved in this? Because this became a big story, right? Rightfully so. No one had any answers. The system made it impossible. I told her about the conditions, and that was when we decided to go to the media. Very good idea. Very good idea. Because oftentimes, with a lot of things, nothing really happens until you go to the media and make just a big fuss over the whole thing. And then when the U.S., I don't know, gets bad news coverage of this, they finally do something. It's really sick how that's how it has to work. She started working with a reporter, asked if I could call. The phone account that Britt had tried to set up wasn't working, so one of the other women let me use her phone. Wow. With nothing to do in my cell but talk, I made new friends with the women there. I learned the reality of seeking asylum. Some of them had paid smugglers to reach the U.S. border. Okay. She obviously has a lot of deep relationships and really like heart-wrenching stories with the people she met during this whole ordeal. It felt as like we'd all been kidnapped and thrown into some sick psychological experiment. That is absolutely right. That is what it seems like. I got a message from Britt. My story had started to blow up on media almost immediately after I was told I was being released. That is so sad that that's how it has to work. That is so, and it really just it admits that there was nothing keeping her there. They didn't have any grounds to keep her there. They could have resolved her case at any time because they did. They did resolve it as soon as they were getting bad media. They resolved it and she was released. So that just shows you how incredibly stupid the whole thing is and how no one's really doing anything. My ICE agent, who never spoken to me, told my lawyer I could have left sooner if I had signed a withdrawal form and that they hadn't known I would pay for my own flight home. This is actually making me mad. This is actually making me mad. If after all that they came to you and they're like, well, if you had just signed this form and paid for your ticket home, yeah, we could have released you. Yeah, why didn't you ask? Yeah, we could have. It's like, oh man. From the moment I arrived, I begged every officer I saw to let me pay for my ticket home. Right. From the moment this whole thing started, she had asked everybody if she could pay for her ticket home. Not a single person had ever talked about it. To put things into perspective, I had a Canadian passport. I had lawyers, media, friends, family, and even politicians advocating for me. And I was detained for 2 weeks, nearly 2 weeks. Imagine what it's like for other people. We were transferred back to San Diego, one last road trip in shackles. I was taken to the airport. The media was there. So the officers tried to sneak me through a side door to avoid seeing me in handcuffs. This is so embarrassing for the United States. And this story deserves to be bigger than it is. This story is not that huge in the United States. I didn't really hear much about this at all. And I think it's because America is embarrassed, and we should be. The officers were kind. It was the first time I had laughed in weeks. I was allowed to put my shoelaces back on. I finally landed in Canada. My mom and friends were waiting. I spoke to the media. I was numb and delusional from exhaustion, of course. What an ordeal. My friends recounted having to work with lawyers, the media, phone calls, trying to get through to the U.S. Immigration and Customs, which seems very difficult. They said the entire system is basically rigged, designed to make it basically impossible for anyone to get out. It's a business. These facilities are privately owned and run for profit? What? This is terrifying. This is terrifying. The more detainees, the more money they make. This is terrifying story. Terrifying. Holy cow! I can't. This woman went through hell, literally. And thankfully shared her story, and thank God got out. And is kind of raising awareness about this whole thing. Certainly for me, I didn't know about any of this. I really didn't know that's what this story was going to be. I had no idea. I mean, I don't. I'm almost speechless. Genuinely. That's beyond insane, embarrassing, horrible. Not just what happened to her, but the idea of these detention centers that are run for profit. It's kind of like our healthcare system that's run for profits, and you don't want hospitals and prisons being run for profit. That's for sure. But regardless of any of that, what happened to her is a total embarrassment of the U.S. system, basically. I don't know, not much more for me to say about this. I'm just glad I'm more educated about what happened here. I never in a million years imagined this could happen to just a normal Canadian person. Like, never would have thought that. That is crazy. But anyway, if you enjoyed this, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts on what happened to Jasmine Mooney, Canadian woman who just wanted to work in the United States. That's the crime she's guilty of. Trying to work legally in the U.S. That's the crime. Feel free to leave your thoughts on all this. That'd be really cool to hear about. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to Canada and learning about Canadian culture, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.